What a great time to be a game developer and an RPG fan, right? Because I'm here to talk about Baldur's Gate 3. Last year, Larian Studios released Baldur's Gate 3, and it took the world by storm. A CRPG, a computer RPG, went on to win almost all Game of the Year awards possible, best narrative, best game, best direction, everything. So it was very, very exciting for me. And yeah, the game is incredible, has a lot of merit. But then I started to see a discussion when the game was released about the game setting unrealistic, high quality standards for the industry, right? So that should be the best kind of criticism. You're being criticized by being too good because your game is too good. So I think that should be the best kind of criticism to receive. But I mean, did Baldur's Gate 3 set unrealistic standards for the industry and that's ultimately a bad thing? Well, yes and no. And we are here today to talk about that. Hey guys, I'm Harry. I've been a game designer and producer for the past 10 years. I have worked with several productions for PC, mobile, different teams. So I have a lot of insight from the games industry. And I'm here to talk about games, production, and interesting things all over the place. So if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, hit a like on the video. So I know that you guys want more of that type of content because I'm very happy talking about those things. I get very excited talking about games and productions and, issues that the games industry has because there are a lot of them and we're going to talk about here today as well. So one of the things that stood out for Baldur's Gate 3 is that upon launch, it is seemingly in very good shape. And it's becoming more and more common nowadays that companies, especially AA, AAA productions, they have a lot of trouble upon launch. So either the game is too buggy or some features are not there, are half-baked, and it's not engaging, or something happens, right? We saw that with Cyberpunk, we saw that now with Starfield, we saw that all over the place. So Baldur's Gate, apparently, it's all well-rounded. The game is good, not a lot of bugs reported, so the game was in a very solid shape. The choice and freedom that you get in an RPG like that is almost unprecedented. A lot of people comparing, Baldur's Gate is based on the D&D, the Dungeons and Dragons system, tabletop system. And in the tabletop system, you have full control. You have full freedom and choice about how you're going to act and how your character is going to act. And Baldur's Gate 3 was praised because it could reproduce a lot of that freedom in a video game, right? Because video games are almost always limited in that sense. You cannot do everything that you want. There's always limitations, clear limitations in terms of the branched dialogues or, different endings, all of that stuff. And I think Baldur's Gate 3 sets a new standard for the genre and for the industry overall. And it's great. I was watching the making of videos for the game and you can see the excitement in the team and the game director, Sven Vinke. I'm probably butchering his name. Sorry about that. But Sven, you can see the excitement in the team, right? And that's great to see. Many times you can think that's a given that, oh no, all teams are passionate like that. And, that's a standard in the industry. And I'm here to tell you it's not, right? And not just from the high executives and all those money guys. It's not just about that. It's about the teams. Many times they lack the commitment for quality and they lack the drive, they lack the passion because, at the end of the day, games are a very, very cool medium for you to work with, but it's also a job. It's the day-to-day job for all of the developers. And you have to balance between like being too excited about what you're producing and understanding that there's the job, is your way to make a living in the industry. So either you are an artist, a designer, a programmer, whatever, but you have to balance out those sides of the coin. But anyway, it's great to see Baldur's Gate 3 in that position. I am a big CRPG fan, right? Pillars of Eternity, Diablo, Fallout, Wasteland 2, all of those games were very, very influential in my life in different ways, in different periods. Diablo 1 I played back in the day, in the 90s. Fallout 1 was much much later. I was already much older when I played Fallout 1, and it was an incredible game. The level of choice and consequence that you get by playing Fallout 1. I mean, it's a dated game if you are not used to that, but it's so, so good. The narrative, the characters, the post apocalyptic world is something that I learned to love, and it's one of my favorite settings nowadays for any type of game. Pillars of Eternity, I think it was released in 2016 by Obsidian, one of my favorite studios in the world. Obsidian guys are top notch, they're completely awesome, and they are working in Avowed nowadays, right? Avowed was announced, we saw a little bit of gameplay. It was a little bit mixed reactions from the trailer that we saw, but I mean, I'm super confident, and I'm very, very happy to see that the Pillars of Eternity franchise is continuing, because let's be honest, Pillars of Eternity is a hardcore CRPG, top-down, isometric, so that's not for everyone, right? So Obsidian team decided, in my opinion, correctly, to pivot a little bit with Avowed to create a more standard experience that could be compelling to more people around the world, just like Skyrim, just like that kind of experience. And they are incredible doing that. They are the ones behind Fallout New Vegas, one of the most classic and highly praised games of all time. So I'm very hopeful for Avowed and for anything else that Obsidian brings to the market. And Wasteland 2. Wasteland 2 for me is one of the classics, because while I was playing Wasteland 2, and I love turn-based games, I love that kind of challenge and strategy that you have to create midway through combat. But there's one aspect of Wasteland 2 that was very, very influential and remarkable to me. Your characters can die. Like, you have a party of like 4, 5, 6 characters. I don't remember correctly right now, but you have a party of characters, and your characters might die in combat, right? You can save, you can reload your game, but when they die in combat, they die. You had to reload your save if you didn't want your character to die. But then I decided to let my characters die. If they died in combat, that's it. Because you can always get more characters. There are the mercenaries that you can get, so you don't run out of characters to play. But you get attached to those characters, you level those characters up. So there's a lot of high stakes in, getting one of your characters be killed. But I decided to do that. And let me tell you, that completely changed my experience with the game. The stakes were so high, any battle could be decisive in that sense. And I kept going until the end. I beat the game like that. And a lot of my characters died. And that was so impactful for me. If you have the chance to play any game like that, do it, because it completely changes the experience. And I don't know, I don't have the words to describe. It's just so fun and challenging like that. The Witcher is also one of my favorite franchises of all time. I mean, The Witcher 3 is a masterpiece, but it was actually The Witcher 2 that got me hooked into the franchise. The Witcher 2 was so, so good. The narrative, the combat, character progression, all of that, the story behind it, it was so good, and I was hooked from there. So that game was so, so good, and it got me hooked in the entire franchise. I went on to play Gwent, the card game. I played for several years, and yeah, it was an awesome and incredible franchise, and I cannot wait to see The Witcher 4. But yeah, coming back to the discussion of Baldur's Gate 3 setting unrealistic standards, truth is that the games industry is very tough. It's very hard for most of the developers, big and small. You can think that for a big developer, for a big studio is much easier, but it is really not. As a big studio, everything that you do is very decisive. Every design decision, every project decision, every financial decision, everything can be decisive, can kind of decide the future of the company. Truth is that most teams nowadays, they're just trying to survive, right? Survive the next project, the next year, because the games industry is ultra competitive. The standards are higher and higher for every production. So many times, you don't have the money, you don't have the time, you don't have the team. And even when you do have all of those pieces, you're trying to create something mega incredibly huge, like Starfield tried to be, right? They're Bethesda. They have the money, they have the time, they have the team. So what happened there? That's another point here. I think one of the solutions for most games to be better upon launch and not be that craziness that we see many times with launch, either technical problems or design problems, is that we accept a reduced scope. The thing with Starfield is that the scope is always increasing. For every next game, the scope is always bigger. Now you're exploring galaxies, then you're exploring universes and parallel universes and whatnot. Like the scope is never ending. So it gets to a point where no team can accommodate that in a reasonable production, in a sane production. No team can end up accommodating that. So you have a lot of bad practices in the industry, like crunching and bad habits in production, stuff releasing half-baked features and a lot of that because you have to create always more. And I'm always going to be a big advocate for smaller scopes. Doesn't mean small scopes, it means smaller, right? We don't need to do everything. Nowadays, we can release games and then continue working on the narrative, on the mechanics, on the characters, everything. Nowadays, this is very common and should be the rule. But many times we still have to get it right. And I mean, Baldur's Gate 3 got it right. And it was incredible. And the team deserves all of the credit. But that is not replicable every time. Even Larian studios were not going to be able to do that every time. Not if they are always trying to be bigger and bigger with each project. Maybe if they settle for this kind of scope and they want to create a different experience with those same, that same timeline, that same scope, then that's much more possible and healthy for the industry. I think that's the main point of this video here. So for me, being great is many times about releasing less and not more, delivering less and not more. And players might react negatively to that. They always want more. But I think studios have to push back a little bit and say, hey, here is a smaller scope for you, but it's super, super high polished and super engaging, super fun. And while you are playing and having a blast playing the game, we are working on other things. We are working on more content. We are working on new mechanics. We will continually be improving on that game over time. Because I think the best games, they are like that. They are better over time. A couple years at least after release. But yeah, Larian did it. And Baldur's Gate 3 is amazing. And it's great to see a CRPG on the cover of the magazines and websites and, the commercials and everything. Because it's a great game. It's a great time for RPG fans. And I think we can expect more and more from Larian, not only from them, but a lot of studios that are going to be inspired by their way of doing things, getting committed to high quality, high standards. And for that, in terms of production, the only way to achieve that is with better production practices. I think the industry still suffers a lot from bad habits from old times, like crunching and a lot of other things. But yeah, with time, I think we can deal with all of those issues and still be able to release great games better, not bigger. Okay, what is your opinion about that? Have you played Baldur's Gate 3? What is your favorite class in an RPG like that? Let me know in the comments below. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to produce more and more content for you guys. So let me know what other games you'd like me to cover. And yeah, that's it. Take care, guys.